Hello and welcome to the Unusual Stories podcast. This is the Unusual Dialogues series, of course. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing my friend who I've met in Kuwait in 2022, Shashi. Hello, Shashi.
Hi, Wojtek. How are you?
Lovely to have you here. And before we even start and talk about the topics that I kind of have prepared here for you, I wanted to give you some space to introduce yourself to our listeners. So obviously, guys, I've met with Shashi when I was working for the business year back in 2022 in Kuwait, and Shashi has the pleasure of living there for the past 7 years so far. So maybe whatever you'd like to share with us to start with, please do so.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me to start off, and thank you so much for letting me speak my mind and everything else. To all the listeners, you can see I have a very thick Indian accent, so I apologize for that. But nothing I can do about it. So I met Wojtek. I'll talk about my introduction in two parts: my professional career as well as my personal one. So professionally, I work currently with KPMG. This is my seventh year with them. I've worked before with Deloitte and EY. So half of my career has been with the Big Four organization. Uh, I'm predominantly a graphic designer. I have a degree in filmmaking, but eventually I moved into marketing. So I'm currently managing the marketing at KPMG. That's me in the terms of career. Overall, a career span of around 17, 18 years now, all and all through marketing and creative side of it. So I've never tried anything else. I've been out and out doing designing, marketing, social media marketing, any form of marketing, what you put across. So that's me as professional. In terms of personal opinion, I would say you can call me as a bona fide nerd, or somewhere between nerd and a geek, I would say, because I love, part of me loves coding, but I like everything which is pop culture, 90s pop culture. uh, I'm a big time Barcelona fan, and I love metal music. So that puts everything all together, about me. So so yeah, I think sweet and short introduction. So
Wonderful. No, thank you. And
what?
I didn't realize that you do coding. That's funny, little thing to learn. Yeah. So as you guys can see, Shashi has been where I'm going, I guess, in a way. I'm going to be starting with PwC in a few months, and we will get to that part of our conversation in a second. For the time being, though, you've already mentioned you're originally Indian, you come from India, so could you share with us some maybe background of how is it in India? You know, I've not had a chance yet to speak with a native Indian in the podcast, and many of our listeners would probably find it quite tropical, let's say, how life goes there. So maybe some fun facts you can share with us to start with.
So okay, fun facts. Okay, so let me say that I'll not say it's a fun fact. I'll say it's a fact that anybody who has been so you cannot understand India by watching movies and videos and TVs. That's the first thing. You have to be there and you have to live in India. Then you will understand India. So I belong from Delhi, which is the north of Gurgaon, rather. Delhi North, Delhi, UP, Gurgaon. That is the north of India. It's a different world as compared to the east of India. It's a different world as compared to south of India. So uh, a lot of my friends who are in Kuwait who have traveled to India, they have been to a part of India, and they believe or they assume that that's the whole country. It is impossible. As a matter of fact, like if you talk about Hindi as a language, now the way Hindi is spoken, it changes every 3 kilometers. So if you cross India, and every 5 kilometers you will see a different dialect, different accent of speaking in Hindi. So the way I speak Hindi is is very close to somebody from Pakistan, because north of India speaks a mix of Hindi, Urdu, and Punjabi. But if you go to a little more eastern side, their way of they say speak Hindi, it becomes very different. So to all of the people out there, if you have to understand India, don't read Shantaram and think that that's India. Don't read anything. Don't see anything which is popular culture and Indian movies to see India. Go there, live there, understand it properly. So there are good things, there are bad things, like every country in the world, but you have to experience it. So this is a nutshell. When it comes to funny stories, there are so many of them, man. It's I've been part of the country which was so I was born in 80s. So I've seen the whole transition of India being from uh, economically, I'm talking about India being a country which was always considered as a third world in the 80s. We saw the whole economical crash around 90s, mid 90s, when India was going through a phase. And then we saw the rising of the country from 95 till 2001 onwards, when there was an IT boom. So I've seen, we are a generation where we saw, and today as we see that we are what, world's fourth largest economy, or fourth or fifth, I would say. This is between the two. Uh, so we have seen that phase when 85 till date, how India has seen modernization, how Indian has been, the image of India has changed both ways. I mean, good way, bad way, whatever you can talk about. But so that was, and it has many stories then. So I cannot pinpoint you one single story. And but yeah, I mean, the whole lifestyle is very different there. So now, and there are so many things which even if I talk to a younger person today who was born in, like, so assumingly few of my interns who were born in 2004 or 2003, if I tell them that this was in India of that time, they don't believe me. So that's how that has changed. So like, for instance, like power cuts was a normal thing in our country back then. So nobody believes it now, but that was us. So there was 80s, it was growing 80s. But yeah, for sure. But in a nutshell, this is what it is, that the transformation journey from India's of 80s till now, it's a very different phenomenon. So
That's
yeah, but coming back, I'll always say that experience it. Don't, you might have a bad experience, you might have a good experience, but do not believe India. There are two things. Okay, so India, as told in the books, India as told in the movies, and India as told by the non-residential Indian. So, what is a non-residential Indian? Somebody who's lived all through. I am a non-residential Indian now. I've been living in Kuwait for 7 years, but there are so many NRIs who are living for 20 years in States, 30 years in UK. So whenever they go back to India, they go back for a vacation for 15 days, 20 days. So if you listen to, so I meet a lot of Americans, a lot of British in Kuwait, and they have heard about India from somebody who's an NRI. So he who has not lived in India ever, who has never casted a vote there. So for them, a version of India. So I would, if somebody wants to understand the country, go there, live there, experience it. That's the only advice I'll give everyone. So
That's awesome. And just a quick question. You said that every 5 kilometers a different dialect is spoken. So how is it
yes.
ensured that, for example, throughout elections, what is the one language or two languages that is administratively, possible for people? Or how do you vote if everyone speaks
Oh,
differently?
so that's the thing. So that is the whole context. So more or less everybody in India, I know very few people who might only know Hindi. I mean, everybody knows a regional language. So if I for talk about me, I know Hindi, I know part Punjabi, I know part Urdu, and I know part Bangla. So I speak Bangla very well because I'm a Bengali. So that's the case with a lot of people living in South. So if there's somebody who's Malayali, he speaks his own language. And he speaks Malayali, of course, and then he speaks English and he speaks Hindi. But so Indian election is very very regional, very very regional. So we know which region, which candidate will dominate. In terms of numbers, I think the largest number of seats are from UP, which is my state, 80 plus seats. And before Narendra Modi and one more prime minister, Devegowda, Mr. Devegowda and Mr. Modi were the two prime ministers which have come from, and then maybe IK Gujral, there was one more prime minister. Apart from that, almost every prime minister has come from UP. So the Uttar Pradesh has around 80 seats out of 500 seats, and so it's a very politically active region. So we speak politics. So but as I was saying, back in the day, there was no Netflix, there was no YouTube. So for us, growing up in schools, that was a fun activity. We used to go and attend political rallies. It was fun for us to go and attend political rallies, see what people are talking about, what our leaders are talking about. So we are very so again, uh, you have to experience the whole thing to understand it.
Amazing.
So
No,
yeah, so
and
that's what yeah.
That's
Yeah,
that's
go ahead,
that's
go ahead.
really interesting. And then my question to you is, and just to put in context for our listeners as well, you said that at the moment you're an NRI, and you've been for a couple of years. But I remember when we've been meeting in Kuwait, you mentioned that you don't really plan to stay in Kuwait forever, let's say.
Yeah.
So, what's your perspective? Do you feel like you will move back to India? If so, what's the plan there?
To be honest, I mean, I've been in a planning phase, of course. Kuwait is it's been great. It's been great for my career, great for my personal life. I've got a lot of learnings, but let's see how it goes. Kuwait, of course, as an expat, I'm not allowed to get. I'll not get a citizenship, so it will never convert to a citizenship. So Kuwait only gives citizenship to Kuwaiti nationals, which is a fair rule considering the population of the country is too small. So they want to. So just like Emirates and Saudis, the same rule across Gulf, that citizenship are transferred only to the citizens, the child and whatever. So that's the policy. So regardless of how many years I work, I will not be taking a citizenship or buying a house here. So obviously it's a long term plan, but India is something which I want to do for both reasons. Of course, my family's there, so I would love to stay close to my family regardless. That's the first thing, and secondly, it's if in future if I want to start a business, for instance, any kind of business, there's no bigger consumer base than India. So that's how it is. The consumer base is so big, you can sell anything if you want. You can sell anything if you want because the volume is so high. So you have to have a really bad business idea to fail as a businessman in India, because you will find a consumer. So that's the thing. So you
So,
will find there are so many products, so many services which the West will not even imagine, or East will not even imagine, which works amazing in India. So if you talk about e-commerce, for instance, now people have like nowhere in the world you will find a delivery model where you order something and the delivery reaches you in 7 minutes, but it's possible in India. That I have my family is in a situation right now that while they're cooking something, they forget to add a spice or whatever. You can just order it, and by the time the food is coming cooking, you get the delivery. So it was only possible because of the sheer volume of people there. So there are so many delivery people, so that will never happen in any other country. So there's an app called as Blinkit, which literally delivers the food within 10 and 15 minutes, whatever you want to order. So that is only possible. So of course, on a long term plan, which I don't know when it will happen, if I even if I start something or do something, it is back in India, because obviously consumer base, the volume of consumers are amazing. So a lot of the countries, for instance, if you talk about geopolitics as well, the current the Russian Ukraine war, and the whole idea of Russia in itself has so many of their own consumers. Even if they're not exporting things, they are doing okay, because they have their own consumers as too much. They don't have to be relying only on exports to different countries. So the same thing with India. India's biggest consumers are Indians only for every product. So I hope it
that's
makes sense. So
yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I like, I know that you sit very deeply, as you mentioned earlier, as an introduction, within the space of being informed and interested in what happens in the world. So that's a very
yeah.
fun addition for our listeners here. Then let's move on to Kuwait. I might come back to India at some point, but
Sure.
I just wanted to, since we already kind of scratch the surface there. You said that you worked in Deloitte, EY, and now you're working in
Yes.
KPMG, which is very interesting because basically you worked in 3 out of the big 4. And maybe my first question here is, have you decided to stay within the big 4, let's say, group because of your experiences within Deloitte and then EY and now KPMG? Do you find that space the right for you, and why?
I mean, the short answer is that I understand this. Okay, so compare it with any other sector in the world. People move to similar sectors eventually because they become expertise in that. So if I'm a healthcare expert, I'll only move into healthcare if I'm selling healthcare, and then eventually as a marketer as well. Although as a marketer you can sell everything you want, but the fact is that in the last half of my career, I have already been with consulting. Can I move to a similar consulting? Yes, of course. Can I move to a service industry? Yes. But if you tell me today that why don't you join a product company, that is where I'll fail massively because I don't know how to sell products. I know, of course, on ground root, but I cannot work with a company called such as, I don't know, Samsung, Whirlpool, whatever, because I don't know the idea behind how to market a product. On in principle, of course, I know, but have never done it. So as your career progress, uh, why don't you continue doing until it's my personal opinion. I believe that you should continue doing what you are good at rather than trying out things, just to understand what's happening. So it's with anything in the world. You become an expert eventually. You keep on practicing, you keep on learning things from the same field, and you become good at it. So why do you have to change? So that's where it is. So in terms of consulting, and I know the market, I know, even if it's transition, which is for any other consulting firm, other similar companies, the transition in on my own personal careers perspective would be much more smoother than joining, I don't know, a retail company, because I don't know how retail firm works. So that's the answer for your question. So it's more of not my intention. It's honestly, this is what I'm good at. So it's just, so take any example of, I don't know, any sports, for instance, like especially in sports, for instance, like players who move from German league, when they join English Premier League, there are majority of players who fail because of the same reason, because the conditions are different, the reasons are different, and they ended up. I can give you examples such as Michael Ballack, who was a legend in Germany, and then he moves to England in Chelsea, fails. Andrei Shevchenko from AC Milan, legend in Milan, because Italy has a different game, and then he moves to Chelsea again, he fails completely. So it's the same thing in career as well. If you're an expert in something, you've been doing good at a certain place, your body, your mind gets adaptive to the whole idea, and then eventually, if you try and change it for no reason, this is what happens. So yeah. So,
And did you
sorry, I'm
did you
giving you longer
start?
answer. Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's exactly why we're here for. So, did you both in Deloitte, EY, and KPMG always worked in the marketing department, or did you start somewhere else?
No, so it was marketing, but in Big Fours, the marketing is very, very different as compared to other firms. There are different departments. So in Deloitte, I was only towards, because obviously Deloitte India is a much more bigger in terms of size and work. So I was only part of the function which was making client pitches, which is pursuits. That's what you do. In EY, I was more towards quality. I was doing quality checks for my designs and brandings and things like that. Deloitte, I moved more into pursuits, making client pitches, because the marketing team in itself was around 100 people. So, because Deloitte is a big firm, you need more people. So, when you have more people, everything has to be distributed and organized accordingly. KPMG, when I moved here, since obviously it's much more a smaller firm in terms of numbers of people, so I had to do multiple things. So obviously the journey has been that you end up doing everything, But it was always in marketing. It was not that I was doing something else altogether. So it was always in domain of marketing only. But yeah, different roles. So.
Yeah, no, and it makes sense. You kind of you tried a few things, but it was narrowing down the scope to that and still staying within the boundaries of marketing, and that's So now let's talk about that for a moment. Let's park in KPMG in Kuwait. So you live in Kuwait since. For
2017.
Yeah, 2017. That's quite some time now. And how is Kuwait for you? You've kind of briefly mentioned, and I did have a podcast here sharing with my audience my personal experiences, but obviously they were quite restricted because I've only lived there for 9 months, whereas you've been there for longer. So how is Kuwait? Maybe let's start with that.
That I'll tell you in a simple term, Kuwait is more peaceful. I come from one of the most hectic lifestyle country in the whole world, and then I moved to Kuwait. It's more peaceful. It's quiet. It's peaceful. There are just of course there are just less people. So obviously but Kuwait also, if I talk about, it has two parts. Was a part of Kuwait which was before which a part of Kuwait which was before COVID, and now this is Kuwait after COVID. There are two different things altogether. So uh, after COVID happened, Kuwait has seen a lot of transformation in terms of digitalization and things like that, which was not there before COVID. Before COVID, Kuwait was still old school, like in a lot of terms. For instance, my first salary was in a bank check, which was a surprise for me because last time I used a check was easily 7 years, 8 years back. So versus now, if I see, it's much more digitally advanced. But in general, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of living standards, uh, of course, living standard is much more higher in terms of as you compare to India. It's a rich, oil-rich country. It's much more fancier, but I believe it's my personal opinion. Because I am not a very openly social person. In India as well, so culturally they are very close to each other. There's something called as Divania, which you must have heard a lot. So they're very culturally close to each other. They like meeting people. They like to stay in a group. They're very open, warm, and welcoming in terms of both Kuwaitis as well as, and I have to say, the rest of the Arab world expats. So I'll not say only Kuwaitis. I'll say rest of the Arab world expats. They're very tight knit community. So that's what it is. Uh, and in terms of work, in terms of speed, it's way slower than India. India is running all the time, all the time. So it's way slow. Like for instance, today is Friday, and Friday morning till the time you don't have your Friday prayers, you must have seen already when you were in Kuwait. It's absolutely quiet. So right after the prayer at 12 in the afternoon, when you see activities outside. So for me, it's impossible to get a weekend in India which is quiet or silent, for instance. So that's how it is. So but yeah, so in a nutshell, it's much more peaceful.
No,
Much more
yeah,
peaceful. So.
of course, and I do remember, and just as a reminder for people who didn't listen to the episode about Kuwait, Friday and Saturday is the weekend there, so that's why Shashi is mentioning that today is a relaxed day, and then Sunday they kick off again. And an interesting thing you mentioned was the diwaniyas, and I do remember I was blessed to experience, I think, 4 or 5 diwaniyas with one of my friend I've met from one of the ministries actually. And first of all, have you experienced them yourself? Is that something that you do on a regular basis?
I mean, not regular basis, but it's not like a proper Devanya. But yeah, I mean, that's how it is. So we have our own friend circle. We meet every day, every weekend. So it's a very common thing. It's a very common thing. So.
And tell us a little bit, because obviously when I shared my story, I did mention that in the scarce free time I had, for the most part, I was taking care of my body and my mind, and then doing some projects on the side, and then meeting with a few people that I've met there, including yourself. What do you do in your free time in Kuwait? Because I think this is the one thing that I've noticed being very different to Europe, for example, the way they spend their free
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, and again, so that's where it'll be more interesting, because I've come from a different country altogether. So the way free time is spent in Europe versus free time spent in India, so two different things altogether. It's an absolutely different ball game, and uh, India has so many things all the time. So the concept of free time, like for instance, it's a basic thing. So distances. So uh, my half of my life when I was in India was stuck in traffic only. So, so, so it's a distances as well. So it's not like, So even if I'm traveling in Delhi in particular, I never worked in any other city apart from Delhi, so I cannot say how life is in Bangalore or Bombay or something like that. But in a nutshell, even if I'm starting at like sharp at 5:30 from my office, on an average I would reach home by 8. So that was like 2.5 hour journey. It's 2 hours, 2.5 hour journey in Delhi. It's pretty common. And if you have to reach office by 9, you have to start around 7:30. So you're 12 hours, you're out of home, and by reach by. So for me it was alien that I used to start at 5:30 and in 15 minutes I am home. So for for a long time I had to figure out that what exactly should I do with so much of free time? So obviously there are so many activities for expats to do, and depending on what are your interests, you can do a lot of things. And as I said, it's a very close knit, welcoming community. Uh, if you want to be, so there are a lot of, Kuwait has a lot of sports activities, indoor and outdoor. Outdoor unfortunately during summers is impossible, but there are a lot of indoor activities. There are a lot of gyms, but and there is a lot to eat. So Kuwait is known for, Kuwait. I've been to a lot of Middle Eastern countries. There's nothing, and people think that Dubai food maybe is better, but let me tell you, there's nowhere else better food quality than Kuwait. Kuwaitis take their food very seriously. The quality of food, the taste, the prices are phenomenal, phenomenal. So yeah, so that's what people do here. So either you work out, you eat, and you work out. That's the whole idea, that you finish a plate of majboos in the night and then you work out in the gym in the morning. So so
That's
yeah, so in general, I think, and it's because of the whole history of Kuwait. Because see, it is you have to understand, all of the Middle East countries back in the day, they can only work during the evening hours. So their days were always shorter. So that's the culture today as well. Everybody in the Middle East, they are in their office by 7:38, because it's too hot otherwise. And then they leave by 3:30. They go back home, they rest for a while, and then they start the rest of the activities in the evening. So this is the common culture, and it's hard to do. The reason is the whole phenomenon of the whole Middle East culture of working only during the evening times. So you cannot just, it's 55, 60 degrees outside, you cannot work during the day. It's normal. So comparatively, just like Europe, for instance, you work during the days because it's too cold during the nights to work. It's the same logic.
I
You
see.
cannot just go out. And I'm talking about like 40s, 50s. Nowadays everybody's working, but during the night it's bitter cold, so you try to finish everything by 4:30. So if you talk about a lot of places in England, or Ireland, in that case it closes at 4:30. Everything is shut down at 4 5, because people just want to go stay indoors after in the evening. So, and it's the other way around for the Middle East, because it's too hot outside during the day. So
And I have two questions following what you've just said. First of all, is can you give us your favorite two or one or three restaurants that people should check out if they do end up in Kuwait in near future? Or maybe one place. I did already mention Babel for those that would like to try it. So if you had that in mind, please don't. But yeah, what restaurants? And then I'll go to the second question.
So this is very interesting because we recently made a food and beverage report. It's been like a month or so that we released it. So in the last 6 months, as part of my KPMG project, I was just working on the food and beverage sector. Of course, although it's a Lebanese food is the most favorite food in Kuwait. The most favorite. So Babel is a Lebanese restaurant. We have Mez Al Ghanem, which is again a Lebanese place. We have Zaituna, which is a Lebanese place. So Lebanese food is by far the best, right? Uh, Due to the influence of America in Kuwait after the after British Army left and Americans entered mid 70s. Due to that influence, Kuwait has, I believe, and I'm hearing it from a lot of people who have lived in America. They have amazing burger joints. So burger fast food, American fast food is very very popular in Kuwait, very popular. So New York style pizza, American fast food. Uh, so if you're an American, you will never feel out of context. Anything which you can eat in the US, you'll find a version of that in Kuwait. So that, and of course, there are a lot of Indian places as well because of the sheer volume of Indians living in the country. So yeah, I mean, I cannot say top three, but I definitely like every now and then I visit Mughal Mahal, which is the Indian place. Uh, and of between Mazel Ghanem and Zaituna, I prefer for my Lebanese craving. And then there are a lot of American fast food, Cheesecake Factory, for instance, which is a very popular joint around the world. So yeah, so there are multiple places. There are a lot of cafes as well, so which are very popular culture. But I would surely would want to. So for instance, Elevation Burger is a place which is an American brand, but it is more popular in Kuwait. So Elevation Burger is there. There's a lot of Italian places now in Kuwait. So it's always evolving. Uh, the thing about Kuwait is that because of the amount of capital the business owners have. So if I want to start I don't know, Neapolitan restaurants, I'll just go to Nepal and hire the most expensive chef possible to come to Kuwait and just make. So you get more authentic cuisine. There's no shortcuts. There's no cutting the corners in terms of food and beverage, in terms of culture. So yeah, so you will have so if you talk about cuisines, I think the most popular cuisine is Lebanese, followed by Indian, followed by the local food, and then you have other ones. So Italian is in top four, Chinese is there, so pretty mix and match of it. I like Peacock as well. Peacock is good for Chinese food, so definitely Peacock, Mughal Mahal, and I would say Zaituna as the top three in terms of my personal preferences. So
Awesome. No, that's great. And now my second question, following what you said earlier, and this is something that I've already shared with, at least from my perspective, is the difference in the culture of work and the relationships at work. So I remember very early on when me and Agustina got in touch with you and we started to meet both professionally and sort of friendship wise. You've not only you but many other people also mentioned to us that the way Europeans, for example, sell does not work the same in Kuwait and in the Middle East in general. And my question to you is, first of all, if you can just paint a picture of how that culture differs in Kuwait from, for instance, India, and secondly, how did you find yourself there? Is it similar to India in a sense of those tight-knit relationships, or is India much more, business as usual, let's get it done, shake a hand and leave, like we do in Europe, for example, that I find more to my
no, no.
culture?
So I would say East. I would club everything to East and West. East works in a very different way altogether as compared to West. Personal relationship matter a lot in India. There are a lot of personal friends. We will only work with people. As an Indian, I will only try and work with people I like. I will not work based on the products and services that person is selling. Uh, in terms of business, B2B, I'm not talking about B2C. B2C is a different thing altogether. But in terms of B2B, in India as well, personal relationship, networking matters a lot, right? And I think networking matters a lot in every part of the world. uh, just because you just because people ultimately, no matter how much technology is advanced, at certain point people want to meet people, you know. We were always thinking, because see, the whole rise of Amazon happened in front of when I was in my 20s, right? uh, so 2007 2008 was when India had both the rise of Amazon and other e-commerce companies. I was in my mid 20s. So we believed in 20s, that the human interaction will be zero. We will not see any more shops out on the street. Everything will be wiped off. uh, uh, so the idea of Amazon was to kill the local business. Now we have Amazon and local businesses and hyper local online retail shop as well. So the whole idea of going there and buying there, yes, Amazon has changed the game completely in India. I should not say that people don't go out and there ways to buy things, but till date, so people matter a lot. Even if I like somebody, I'm happy to spend the extra dollar. As simple as that. That, yeah, okay, this guy is expensive, but he's a nice guy. Let's try and invest some money on him, rather than somebody who's selling a fantastic product and services. So Middle East, yes. So networking matters a lot. That's what I've realized in the last 7 years. I did not strategize it initially starting off when I moved here. I was super first 2.5 years. I was just occupied in setting up the shop. And anybody who tells you that marketing is a magic, it's not. I believe marketing is purely scientific. You have to build a lot of things. So it took me at least 2.5 3 years to properly understand the market. And you will only so that is the problem. I think as a marketer, I'm very slow as compared to other people out there on anywhere. I take time to understand the market. I just don't believe a report published by, I don't know, any research company to understand the market. You have to live there. So you have to live there to understand the market, how market it is, how are the people, uh, how's the business community, things like that. The only difference which I will say between India and Kuwait, and is because the sheer size, is that Kuwait is very, very family oriented, driven by family businesses. So there are a lot of families, there are a lot of family groups, and that matters a lot. So how well you're connected between the family members. So that is not the case when it comes to India, because India's, because of the volume, because of the sheer volume. So I will, I don't know how, I've never worked in anywhere in the Western country, but if I talk about networking, I believe it matters everywhere. It matters everywhere in the world, that you should need to know people. You need to meet them, you need to understand them, then the you know but the results in on a long term will be much more fruitful when it comes to networking, yeah, as compared to just believing in things. So yeah.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think, I mean, maybe I feel like it's slightly underappreciated in our sort of culture, let's say Western, as you said. But recently, I've listened to a bunch of different podcasts that start talking about the fact that even though all this remote work, has taken over in many areas, and myself, I've been working remotely for the past year, many people are coming back to the offices for that human connection, because if you don't, then it just affects your mental health. And I think that's another
Yeah,
part of the trust that you build with people. If you don't actually, I've never met anyone
it's
from my
not it's not
company,
it's it's not mental health. Mental health is one thing. I believe the work becomes much more faster. Just go out and meet them. That, bro, can you do this for me? And it's done. It's much more faster. Otherwise, you have to write an email and wait for 2 weeks for that person to respond. So better that, and it is so. And I've seen it. Like, yeah, let's go for a cup of coffee, get the work. So ever since we have come back to offices after COVID, the work has become much more faster. They're
and
more structured to it. It is much more faster. So obviously there are a few companies, like big IT giant companies, where you don't have to go every day, which is fair enough. uh, I feel that it should be a mix and match of both. You should have few days where you are allowed to work remotely, and then there are a few days which where you should have to go to office mandatory. So so that is the best model in terms of. In Kuwait, I prefer going to office because it's very. I mean, it's like in India, I can understand that to drive to your office every day for 2.5 hours, it's painful. You know, so if you're doing that twice a week, you're much more happier. But in Kuwait, everything maximum you'll just take 30 minutes to go to one place to another. So just drive. It's much more faster. So that's what we believe in. So
No, no, that's very true, and I do remember, just the way you can go from A to B in Kuwait was very very pleasant. Obviously, I got stuck in the traffic every now and then, but it was it was an odd time rather than a daily necessity.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whereas, in Warsaw, I when I was still in school, but I was already driving. As you said, I would spend 2 hours just to get from A to B, and that's 2 hours both ways, 4 hours, and that's one
Yeah,
third
yeah.
of your waking time over.
Exactly, exactly.
And okay, Shashi, so before we maybe move on to the final major topic, I just wanted to ask you about your life in India professionally, because I feel like personally as well, I don't really know what you've done before, and you said you did a bit of Deloitte and EY while still in India. What happened before that? Because funnily enough, you did also study film and TV, which I did, and here we are talking about consulting companies.
No, so okay. How would I sum it up? So obviously, when I did the film and my bachelor's is a very diversified kind of a thing. My bachelor's is in coding. I have a bachelor's of computer application, uh, and this is I'm talking about early 2000s. So obviously, India was then becoming an IT giant. So everybody back then was doing the same computer science. 2003 6, I had always had a love for films, so I decided to do my masters in filmmaking on the post production side. Not I'm not good looking enough to become an actor. So in India, you have to become an actor, you have to know acting, dancing, singing, everything. So regardless, so so I did the post production. I understood how to make a movie, the direction, the writing, the editing, the graphics, things like that. And obviously, when I was in 2005 6, that was the time when we all were inspired by the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That we all saw Peter Jackson's masterpiece, and we were like, this is what we should make, whatever. So those stupid dreams. But regardless, so I started with my first job was with ESPN, which was obviously the channel, the TV channel. So from there, I moved into various corporates. Uh, Personally, I've never worked in an ad agency because the culture was different for me. So I moved into corporates, various corporates. I worked in IT sector, I worked in telecom, I worked, but always on the marketing side and towards the B2B business. So I've never worked for a Walmart, for instance, or a similar company. So I worked for an IT firm, I worked for a telecom firm, I worked for two IT firm, two telecom firm. Then I moved. So that was my first 7 8 years of work experience, and then I moved to EY. So for me, it was always a B2B kind of a transition. Uh, so that's the professional wise. Personal wise is, as I said, India has so much to explore, and partially being is the competition. Now, if I'm good at something, if you're an Indian and if you're good at something, there'll be, I don't know, half a million people good at the same thing. You know, so you have to always keep on improving yourself. You always have to. There's always a stiff competition. If you're applying for a job, there are five roles. So there are jobs with, I'm talking about the private sector. For every job opening, you will have around 600 applications coming up, and you have to get that job. So if you don't improve yourself, if you don't train yourself every day in your work skill, it gets impossible. And getting a job is one thing, and sustaining the job is second thing in India, because if you falter, if you flaw in any place, there will be 10 people ready to take your position. So that's why it becomes competitive. It's the sheer volume. It's the sheer volume of people there. So sheer volume of people. So yeah. So EY was, I would say, there was a company called as Aegis, which is a telecom firm. Aegis is part of SR, the oil and gas giant. So SR has a company called as Aegis. So I worked with them. I worked with a couple of small, what do you call, smaller telecom firms. So a real estate company for a while. But yes, always B2B. NIIT was an IT company, which was my first job. NIIT was a software company. So this is 2007, I would say. So that was my first job in 2007. So ever since, yeah, so it's been evolving, growing. Uh, whether, but when I moved to Deloitte, that was the first time I started liking the big four business. So before that, I was always trying to figure out things. And that's why when I meet a lot of young people, which might be my last message before to end the podcast, that when I meet a lot of young people who are just thinking that this is not working out, so give yourself time. So Deloitte, but when I moved to Deloitte, I've already had like 10 years, 11 years of experience. And then I finally fell in love with the consulting business. That is because I was old enough to understand what exactly consulting is. And that is where I started loving it. That the amount of projects, the amount of crazy projects Deloitte was doing, the variety of projects Deloitte or the big fours do, uh, no other companies do it. So yes, there are good side to it, there are bad side to any company, but the only difference a big four versus a non big four is that big four is into multiple projects, multiple sectors all the time. So as a marketer, you get the opportunity to understand everything. So that's the whole idea about marketing, is that you can limit your thought process and just do your job, or you can try and understand the whole business. So if you try and understand the whole business, it becomes much more better for you as a marketing to sell these things. So that's the difference. But in India, as I said, you have to improve yourself. You always have to study. You always have to invest in your work. You always have to practice. Otherwise, you become dinosaur. And you have to diversify. If I were a graphic designer, I started as graphic designer. If I were a graphic designer, I will never be the place I am because I diversified. I learned marketing. I learned data analytics. I learned and designing as well. I started as a print designer who was doing just print magazines and everything. But over the course of my career, I've learned coding. I can do HTML coding, I can make websites, I can make apps, I can edit videos, I can edit audio. So in your own domain, in your own skill sets, you have to diversify. Otherwise, in a country like India, you're a dinosaur. You're done in 5 years because the market is booming, especially in marketing. Because any technology comes in, the first impact will be on marketing, including AI today. So if you talk about Chat GPT, there were 5 years back, there was a huge position in every ad agency, which was a copywriter who used to write copies for different brands. Now Chat GPT is doing it with a single prompt. So copywriters have to evolve to become somebody else so that their role is relevant. So in a nutshell, yeah,
That's very true,
that's what
and
I.
funnily enough, I sort of missed that part because I went to the business year. But that's exactly what I did before the business year. I was majorly just writing copy for different small and medium enterprises. And now you sort of touched it already, so we can move on to our final topic for today, which is maybe a little bit more on the practical sort of advice side. And we've already talked about this, which is really like prevalent. It is true that people will pivot apparently 7 to 10 times in their career these days. Maybe just because of technology advancement, maybe other reasons. Myself, I've already had I think 3 or 4 major changes in my career, and now I'm about to go for a next one. And maybe kind of as if you were talking to me, but also to anyone out there who is interested in or considering going into the Big Four in any capacity. Because as we talked on the phone the other week, I do believe a big part of it is very intertwined. Obviously, I might join the audit team, but over the course of my career, I might stay with the consulting, I might become a marketer. There are many hats to wear there. And first of all, maybe what's your take on that area, on that business? Why should people consider it if so? And then what can we do to make ourselves stand out for recruiters like EY, Deloitte, KPMG, or PwC?
For recruiters, okay, so again, so when it comes to big fours and companies, all of the big fours, it is very very regional, tropical. The way big four works in UK, KPM, UK versus India versus US, there. So I personally don't believe there's a one fit solution that I can say to all of your audience. It totally depends on the country you're working in. But the only advice I would say is that when it comes to big fours, give yourself time. Give yourself time, have patience. Don't just conclude in 6 months that, yeah, this is good for me or bad for me. You know, personally, what I've seen is that consulting is a business after working for, I don't know, 12 to 13 years in Big Fours, in particular in Big Fours, 14 to 15 years now, that consulting is something which either you will like or you will won't like. Simple as that. Either you will love it, day one, you enter, you love the environment, you love the work. It's not, but if you give it a time, it slowly grows into you. It slowly grows upon you, because, and you have to invest yourself on a lot. You have to I mean, the amount of books and an amount of things I read today as well, you have to invest your time. You cannot just believe that because I have years of experience under my belt, I can do this. No, it's impossible. It's so much. So like, for take me for instance, like 3 years back, I had no clues that today in 2024 I had to market ESG as well. I have no clues about ESG, right? So now I go back and start reading about what are the GRI reports, how to do carbon footprints, so it is always an evolving field. Like, before coming to Kuwait, I have never tried to understand what cybersecurity is, because the work was very different in India. But when I came here, I had to learn about cybersecurity a lot more than what I was. So the idea in Big Four is that if you do not invest on yourself, give it more time, try to learn things. There are so many, and I'm talking about Kuwait, which is a much more smaller member firm as compared to, let's say, UK. Now, KPMG, for instance, I'm just talking about KPMG. KPMG in total gives around 300 plus services. So and every service is different from one another. Even if I'm talking about audit, it's not the same audit which was happening 70 years or 50 years back. It's a diversified. There are so many regulations, so many new compliances now, that you can. So can you become you're doing an auditor, but you can also become an environment auditor now, which was not there 50 years back. Now you have to audit carbon footprints for a company. So like, EU's has the new trade laws on shipping recently, on carbon shipping as well. So you have to audit those things, that if I'm doing shipping from one place to another, what is the carbon consumption I have. So as an auditor as well, now you have to adopt and you have to learn these things. Right. So take Kuwait, for example. Kuwait is in January next year. They have already signed an agreement with OECD, which means that they are part of the BEPS Pillar 2 taxation globally. So a lot of the auditors who did not know anything about tax are learning about tax now. So it's worldwide. So Big Fours or a consulting firm, you have to invest your time. It's
That
not like selling a product at all. You have to diversify. You have to keep on learning all the time. So that's the Big Four kind of an advice I would give you. That have patience, give yourself time, invest time. And if you're in 20s, why not? That's what I feel. That invest time, learn, learn as much as you can from everywhere. So
And
yeah, so that's yeah.
from what I'm hearing from you, I guess a good a good indicator for people who would want to consider whether or not to go into Big Four for some time or for longer is if they're curious and they have a drive to learn new things, right?
Yes, 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 yes. So in a nutshell, if I simplify it, that and it for me, it's been my lifestyle that if you go to a new place or any place in the world, saying that I know it all, you'll never learn. You're closing yourself to learning. So, be it Big Four, be it going to a new place, to travel as well. If you believe in what and that's I think it's more or less the generic message I want to give to everybody, and I tell them that don't believe in what the articles, the reels, the things are saying. Live it, go and experience it. Unless you do not experience it, how would you know it's a good? Maybe it's a different experience for somebody else, it's a different experience for me. Like for instance, in terms of ad agencies, there are people who love working in ad agencies. When I went there, I did not like it. So it's a personal opinion. I should not then general the problem with. I will not say the problem. The challenge is that people just make these podcasts and reels and saying things that do A B C D E. When you go to a XYZ firm, the point is that they're telling their own experiences, but they're generalizing the whole thing. So try it out, experience yourself, and see how it goes. So just go with an open mind, blank canvas, and you will and be open to, just as you were saying, be open to learning. So if you're open to learning, you will learn a lot. If you close yourself from learning, you'll not learn nothing at all. So that's how it is. So
And was it so? Just closing off on that, my experience, I was very surprised that they considered me and they pushed me through the first stage, of second stage, and then third stage of the interviews to the point that they offered me a position. But what I've noticed and what I've discussed with my father is that for the most part, what it seems they've been looking for is the way I am as an attitude and the way I am as my drive forward, rather than my skills right this moment. Because I don't come from a background of any financial, sort of work experience whatsoever. Is that something that you can relate to in your journey? That sort of my message to people would be: do not feel discouraged by the lack of skills you may have if you have the right attitude and the drive to learn and to grow into the role yourself. Is that something that you can resonate with?
yes, see the skills. Of course, you learn the basics. I can only talk about marketing in this case. I'm not a qualified chartered accountant, but what I know for sure in terms of audit, the rules of double entry book system accountings were made 200 years back. They haven't changed. They haven't changed at all. So the basic stays the same. It's about how you quickly understand a business and how it, and purely talking about audit, because I met a lot of chartered accountants. I've been working with a lot of CAs in the last 15 years of my career. The only thing they say is that every business is different from another. So few of them are expert in banking, others are expert in oil and gas. The way an oil and gas audit will work is completely different from a way a, a banking sector will work. So uh, as you were rightly saying, technique, the skill set will improve eventually. The more you work, the better you will get at it. So there are so many things you will not know about oil and gas. For instance, I did not know a lot about oil and gas. I had a very very vague idea about oil and gas sector because I was not in a country which drills oil. The moment I moved to a country, my entire perspective had changed because I have learned so many things about midstream, downstream, upstream, uh, technical terms, volume, things like that. And as an auditor, you need to learn all of these things. So there are two things: is the basic skills which they look into, attitude for sure. I mean, if I'm recruiting somebody for my job for marketing as well, uh, the first preference I give on person on attitude, that is this person how should I put it? Okay, so you have to make yourself convincing enough that people want to invest on you. You know, that's what a fresh recruiter, I would say, that convince people that yes, I want to invest on you. So uh, and we love, like, people love mentoring. People love mentoring, but they can only they mentor people who do they think that yes, this person will take forward my knowledge. And mentoring is something which has been there forever in our history of humankind. If you read the book called as Sapiens, you will understand it, that the mentoring and learning is the only common standard thing across generations, that people like to mentor. But you have to be open enough to get an idea that yes, I want to learn. you know so that's more or less, that's where you put it. So technical skill will eventually, you become, even if you have degrees, 10 degrees. I have known people, trust me, what I know people who have a PhD in marketing, but they cannot work one single day, because their research they were doing, they had unlimited amount of time. So if I tell them that okay, you have to do the similar research in 2 hours, they'll panic. So that is comes so you know so you can only it's same. Workforces are like managing an army. So unless you're not in that situation, you will never learn it. So big force or any other company, whatever you choose, you have to actually work. You have to, at a certain point in time, you have to roll your sleeves and get your hands dirty, otherwise you'll never learn. So technique, no matter how good your academics are, uh, in my career in the last so many years, I've met people who have done their marketing from London School of Economics, Harvard's, and when they have started working, they have realized that what did they learn in college, and they have a very fancy degree and good connections, and they're very smart. I'm not saying they're dull; they're super smart. But when they come and work in a real world scenario, they feel odd. They say, no, this is not something we had hoped for. So technically, you'll become better. The more you practice, the more you learn, you become better. Yeah. So that's how I put it.
That's great, and I guess it's about time we wrap it up. So as per usual, as I mentioned to you at the very beginning, we have a closing tradition on our podcast that we give space to our guests to share anything in the world you'd like to share that you've not shared yet. Maybe it's an advice, an invitation, a blessing, a quote, a book to look into, anything at all that you would like to leave our listeners with as your sort of goodbye message.
No, so it's not. I'll be very generic advice. Is the whole trend of people. What I've realized recently is that I meet a lot of young people. I've done a couple of we're doing few programs where I have to meet a lot of younger people, and unfortunately, nobody reads nowadays. They are just watching reels, uh, short videos to understand what is the topic, and they want to talk about the topic. They're much don't take me wrong. Today's generation is much more smarter than us. They're much more aware, they're much more informed, but they're informed in a wrong manner. They're reading a headline or a short summary of certain thing. So my only advice is that if you are interested in any topic in the world, do more detailed studies, do more in-depth study. So if you want to know about history of a particular country, don't just watch a movie and believe that it's the truth. So that is the whole idea, that don't follow a particular uh, one kind of a podcaster or one kind of a TV journalist to make an opinion. See all of this, go into in depth. And till date, like, specializations matter a lot. So if you're being a specialist into something, don't give up after 2 years. If you want to specialize something, I mean, recently I was listening to that interview by was it what, Federer. He gave a very good interview in one of the universities farewell, and he told the same thing, that a champion player like Roger Federer had to practice so much to become better and better. So invest on books, read as much as books as you can, because those are the real deal. Read as much as you can about a particular topic, and then learns, rather than just watching few reels and thinking that yes, I know this thing. You don't. So unfortunately, that's how the trends are. That everything is becoming much more shorter. But if you have time, read. So that's my only advice for all of your audiences. So
That's awesome, and that's exactly what we share with the world. You know, a big part of the podcast is also book reviews that are ultimately invitations for people, because we should read more, guys. So thank you so much, Shashi, for coming on, and thank you so much for saying it, because that makes the two of us rather than just me, screaming out of my lungs about this. And guys, something to note here: what Shashi said basically means if you do read and you practice more than those that don't, you will get ahead of others. So you have more chance of being chosen for a job you want, or to achieve success in whatever area you're interested in. So yeah, thank you so much, Shashi, for coming on the podcast.
thank you
That
so
was
much.
amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. So I hope I had made some sense. So thank you.
You certainly did. Thank you so much, guys, for
Thank you.
listening in. And as per usual, have a wonderful week. Stay happy, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.